things first, what got you interested in sports medicine?
Well, like anyone else, I was an athlete when I was growing up in Canada, and I went down to your neck of the woods. I went down to Arizona State, and I saw right away that I was out of my match to play football. So I went to a JC, hoping to be a football player. So I played at Mesa Community College for a couple of years. Went back up to the University of British Columbia, had some significant injuries, so I had to um, come into some other type of career. And I seem to have a affinity with athletic training and sports medicine. I like the camaraderie of helping a team, and I did really well in those classes. So it came a point where I graduated from the University of British Columbia, and nothing was happening for a pro career. Not even like a little cup of coffee with the BC Lions. Your father actually played for them, and I got into golf school, not to be a golf pro, but to be a greenskeeper. And I got into a graduate athletic training sports medicine program at the University of Oregon.
Now, you've had such a wide experience in sports medicine, but why did you decide to start teaching high school students about sports medicine and put them in the real scenarios?
Well, I fell into it because I had a year of being a GA at Oregon, and I worked football and all the sports out there. And I took my first job out in Tennessee, and it really wasn't what I had hoped for. And I had some connections back in the Bay Area, and I got hired by the Center for Sports Medicine. And part of the deal was I was going to be at the clinic part-time, and then I was going to start a sports medicine class that had never been done in California. So I had one class with 18 people, and I just kind of progressed from there. And I saw very quickly that if I could teach my students at a high level, they could do a lot of the work for me. So, I taught them how to tape. I taught them how to do some life-saving techniques. And then the program just took off from there. So it really was, I wanted the athletes to actually see, the sports medicine students actually see how to do these things. And then we could be better for all the sports.
Now, besides dealing with high school students and their drama, what is the biggest difference in sports medicine in the high school scene compared to the college and professional scene?
Well, the thing that I noticed, and I didn't really notice it right away, but obviously the intensity of professional, because I did work professional sports with the San Francisco Dragons of the Professional Lacrosse League. I was part of United States Synchronized Swimming. I worked again at the University of Oregon. The intensity is much higher at the higher levels, right? They're the best of the best. So, that's be significant. And the other thing that I noticed is that when I was working for the Dragons and when I was working for University of Oregon, if an athlete had an illness, like the slightest illness, I had to take care of that athlete. Whereas at the high school level, mom and dad are usually taking care of that. So I actually only have to worry about their sports medicine injuries. And I didn't have to really worry about, if they had a cold or where they weren't feeling well. I actually didn't see the athletes because they weren't allowed to come to school.
Well, what are the biggest differences in sports medicine from when you first started to when you first got into the high school scene to where it is now?
Well, you never even saw this, but when I first started at the University of Oregon or at Northgate High School, I had a shack. I had two tables, right? Two tables. And I built a nationally recognized program from that. Well, you know what we have now at Northgate, right? I have a sports medicine facility. I have 10 tables. I have a taping table. I have all the modalities that you'll see in college. I have game readies. I have ultrasound. I have electric stim. I have interferential, hot packs. I have my students take introduction to sports massage classes at DVC with me. So we're able to offer sports massage at the high school. I have chiropractors who are part of my sports medicine umbrella. I have 3 team doctors. I have a team orthopedic surgeon relative to just me alone in a closet. Now I have, a nationally recognized program where schools are sending me their grad students to be part of my program as they develop into becoming athletic trainers. We signed a deal with the University of Idaho, and they're sending their students to Northgate now.
I still remember the old shack my freshman year, as well
Right.
as when we had to share the wrestling room with you guys in that little classroom back in the
Right.
days.
Yeah, I mean, when that sports medicine facility opened up, I finally I got busy. Like I got busy. Like everyone's coming in, right? I mean,
Yeah,
before it would be they'd be tough. Now they go, do I stay out here at practice when it's 100 degrees, or do I go in and see sports medicine?
and
And
watch
guys,
ESPN.
and not all the athletes were like you, Nick. A lot of them pulled the plug. You'd stay out there no matter what. I never saw you come in from a wrestling practice. Never saw you come in from a football practice ever. But they're not all like you, my friend.
Yeah, I remember there were a couple of times where we'd have, I don't know about an argument, but we'd have to figure out if I was really hurt or not.
Yeah, I get this one. I remember one time. These are great kids, right? And they'd come in, and they had popcorn, and they had their soda, and they got on a table, and they had the TV up on the wall, and they were ready to watch TV. And we were just going out to play a football game against Ukiah and
Oh my
NCAs.
God.
You know, right? We made it to the semifinals, and they're you got to because the boys got to play, right? So big changes, big changes.
Well, with the coronavirus pandemic now, how did you adapt your teaching style online compared to when it was in-person classes?
Yeah, I mean, we had to switch to distance learning, which is something that dinosaurs like myself had to. It was a very difficult learning curve, and I can't say I've mastered it. Although I'm taking many classes during the summer to get better. At Northgate, they went to a Google Classroom, and then at the college, they went to something called a Canvas. So, you know, it was quarter of the year was left, so we did a lot of our elbow evaluation, our shoulder evaluations, all on Zoom, and we would get them to the students, and then I would write lectures out. We'd have tests, and we just did the best we could in a very trying and difficult time, obviously, for not only Northgate High School, but for everyone in the world.
What was the hardest part about trying to adapt and not being able to teach in person?
Well, you know, the Northgate program. I mean, it's such a unique program at Northgate High School, and you know, just something you'd be recognized as the football trainers. I mean, they had to go through to be a Northgate football trainer. They had to go through a rigorous set of tests, and some of those tests were practical, and there was a lot of intensity and a lot of getting on them to try to duplicate the stress that can happen when you're out on a football field and we have these serious situations. So I hadn't really I got to be honest, I didn't figure out how I didn't figure out how to do that over Zoom. So the level of learning perhaps might not be as high as it was. Mount Diablo Unified School District went to a credit no credit. So as long as they were doing the work, you gave them credit, because who knows the different situations that these students and athletes found themselves in. So we had to kind of go that route.
Now, this might not happen quite as much in the Northgate or high school scene, but do you think that this virus can be put into the curriculum and you would teach students about it once we get to know more about it?
Oh, it has to be. It has to be like, I just was writing it down, like all these other diseases that we've had over the years, like MRSA, with TB, influenza, flu. We have to talk about those. And I believe that we'll be talking about COVID. In fact, I'm writing it into my curriculum as we speak, because it's something that we need to be aware of. It's something that is not going to go away. So we need to make sure that we do everything appropriate to keep our athletes safe.
Well, how do you think it will change when it comes to treating athletes since this pandemic?
Well, it's like how what's going on right now, right? I mean, the facility used to be such a gathering space for everyone. People would come and people would be getting treatment, but friends would come in and hang out and just a social place. And that's what I tried to develop. Well, that's got to stop, right? We got to stop that. We got to do what society is doing with the social distancing. So if that's going to be that we're 6 feet apart, if that means that we're going to be in pods or cohorts and you're only going to have 3 or 4 athletes come in and they can only be seen by a certain athletic trainer or a student trainer, then that's how we're going to have to do it. And if we had 8 tables, we're going to have to go with 4 tables perhaps to keep that 6 feet distance, and try to do our job as best as possible, but still provide an outstanding service to not only the athletes at Northgate, but also the students that use our facility.
Do you believe schools will start looking to bring in more nurses or even sports medicine programs because of this?
Well, I got to tell you, if they didn't have sports medicine programs already, they're not going to bring them in now. But certainly with the nurses, I think there's going to be someone that has to be in charge of testing the students. If we go back to that type of on-site learning, that someone's going to have to test a kid who's not feeling well. With regards to my situation at Northgate, I do think I'm hoping that they'll find a place for me. And, as Coach Ballard or Athletic Director Ballard says, maybe you'll be the COVID person that tests the athletes, or my program will be responsible for that. But only time will tell how things shake out, because there's certain sports that it's going to be really difficult for them to get going in the fall. But, other sports, such as cross country, perhaps we have more, athletes running cross country than we do in, most of our other sports.
Now, looking more at the teaching style and going back into classrooms, how are you or the school going to adapt your styles and safety when it comes to in-person classes?
Yeah, great question. I can answer that for the college right now. I teach an introduction to sports massage class, and they're going a hybrid model. And they've let me know right now that I'll be online teaching sports massage, which is going to be interesting. The last meeting I went to with regards to Northgate, they were saying it could go either way. And as of right now, because I double checked, because I knew I was going to be doing this with you today, Nick, they've undecided on which model they're going to go with. I know that I have over 100 students enrolled in my sports medicine program for next year. So how we can fit 100 students into the facility, I'm not sure. Even if that's 30 per class, it will be interesting.
Well, being in the medicine world for a while now, what has this pandemic taught you about your health, or either your students, or even just the country as a whole?
Well, we always took precautions. Like, I don't know if you knew it, but those water bottles that you drank out of, we clean those every day, right? Every day we clean the tops, we clean the water bottles, we clean our drinking stations, our drinking cows, our water cows. And so it emphasizes that we were doing the right thing, right? Because again, if you go back to safety of the athletes first, we were doing that. We placed a high priority on taking care of our athletes. And this COVID-19 is a heavy foot on how are we going to try to keep it going? Because again, it's not going away. So we have to adapt. We have to keep on doing what we do and learn from what we're going to learn through this process of learning about the virus, and how we're going to come out of this, and how sports are going to be played, and how is it going to be different, right? How is it going to be different? Especially when we talk about, water. Like, you're out there. I mean, look how wonderful it was when you guys went from your summer practices to officially sports medicine was there. I mean, it was night and day. You had 8 trainers out there. You had water stations. It was wonderful. Well, we can still be out there following social distance rules, but we cannot have water bottles anymore for you, right? So the players are going to have their own water bottles. Now you got 100 football players, 70 football players. Is there going to be someone who doesn't bring a water bottle? And how are we going to adapt? And is it okay to adapt if we give them one of our water bottles? So these are things that we'll learn as we move forward.
Will CPR adapt after this pandemic, and if so, how?
Well, as you know, I teach CPR, and I teach hundreds of people every year. And I always would tell my students, there's a new way coming, and it's was done. You're not gonna like me when I say this, but it was out of the University of Arizona, and it's hands-only CPR. there's supposed to be enough oxygen in the system that if you get and start doing just chest compressions, that you can keep the person stabilized until the cavalry comes. So certainly, you're certainly not going to do any mouth to mouth anymore. You're going to have some personal protection equipment with you, whether that's probably going to be the kind of the handbags, the bag them, that type of thing. But that's how CPR will be done, and that's how I'm sure it'll be taught officially moving forward.
Now, I know you aren't in the coaching scene, but how do you think teams can keep their players safe and distant from each other?
Well, it's already started, and I know if you've keep in contact with the coaches from Northgate. They're started right now. Football started right now. They're in what they call a cohort, and they have pods. So right now, Northgate has one coach with 12 athletes, and they can do body resistant type exercises and that type of thing. They do temperature checks just like football does. They wear masks for stretching and they strengthening, and they keep their social distancing. So we want the athletes to go back, because strength and conditioning is so vital for all our athletes. And as long as we can adapt and use body weight only, obviously you can't use any of the free weights, at the school. You can't throw a ball around at the school. Like if you were a volleyball player, you can't really do that anymore. But at least we can get going. Now, there's risk factors to every sport. And I have this written down. Like, so for instance, the smaller the number, the more risk there is. So we got wrestling, water polo, football, and soccer all at 4, right? So if you think of the fall sports there, water polo and football. So I was talking to Coach Ballard, something drastic has to happen for football to go off this year. Whereas tennis, golf, and cross country are 12, 11, and 10 respectively. So those sports should be able to play in some capacity, whether they change it to dual league meets, go only 2 schools at one time versus bringing all 8 schools in for a meet. So there are going to be some sports going, and there might be some sports that there might have to be a drastic change in how sports played, a late start, or they might not get off this year.
Do you believe on the rehab side it may be more of an individual's responsibility compared to you or another sports med staff helping them out?
Yeah, that's a great question. What we might do is, I have, say I have 40, 50 kids coming back, and I might go, hey, one of your projects is you are going to do a ankle rehab program, and you're going to put it on Zoom. And when we have someone who has an ankle injury, we'll give them rehab. We'll show them using social distancing how to do the specific ankle TheraBand exercise program, the proprioception, all the different things. But then we'll also send them with this application that they can watch it online also to reinforce what they're doing. And I think they'll have to take responsibility, but it's we're dealing with high school kids, so I think we're going to have to follow up to make sure that they're doing their exercises and get them back. Those days of just coming in for stim and ice, those might be done a little bit. The guys, I can't, coach, I can't do conditioning. I gotta go see Glen, get some stim and ice. I think those days might be long gone.
Oh man, I got to be grateful I had those then.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's so much fun. Got those student trainers and football, and it was good times. It was fun.
Yeah.
Enjoy it.
Well, when it comes to the summer practices or just heat in general and sports now starting to slowly return, how will you or a sports med staff be able to tell the difference between a heat stroke or an illness or even COVID type symptoms?
Yeah, that's another great question. And, we're really not there in the summer. So I hope the coaches are doing this. But, one thing that I've said to Coach Ballard is if you have the same guy doing the temperature check with them every day, right, you're going to know if they're coming in sick. Heat stroke is a part of a whole string of things that can go wrong if someone isn't hydrated. First it's going to be you know, heat exhaustion, and then you're going to go to heat stroke, which is more of a medical emergency. So they're going to come in fine, and then over the course of the practice of conditioning, that's when they're going to turn a little bit south. Versus what I'm thinking is someone who does have the virus, they're going to come in with that high temperature. They're going to come in with these signs and symptoms that we're looking for when we test these athletes before they go out to practice. But then again, that's going to be a good indication why there needs to be some continuity with practices as we move forward into fall and winter sports. Do they come through the athletic training, the facility? Is that going to be done by the coaches as they come into the wrestling room? How is that going to be done?
Now, looking sort of on the unfortunate side, do you think there could be budget cuts when it comes to sports medicine or programs because it's not really functioning right now?
Well, how many times have I been cut in my career at Northgate? A ton, right? So I hope, obviously, I hope not. And again, it's what I talked about. Even though, there might be some sports that might not go off in the fall, there are some sports that will go, that will be playing, that will need to be attended to and taken care of. So to say like we're going to get rid of sports medicine so that cross country and these other sports have no place to go, I'm not sure if the parents of those sports are going to take someone away like myself and my program who really have the best interest of the athletes at our first, what we really want to take care of.
Now, last question. Where do you see sports medicine when it comes to when the coronavirus is handled compared to possibly 5 to 10 years down the road?
Well, I'm probably not going to be around in the profession then, but I do think it's going to be something that we're aware of, that we will have learned from, and that we'll have taken precautions, just like we do with the other things that I talked about before. That was part of the things that can happen to our athletes. And as long as we move forward with making sure that the safety of our athletes are first, we'll learn from this period of time, and we'll move forward, and we'll talk about the time that we had COVID, but it's not going away.
Awesome. Thank you for your time, Glenn.
Nick, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to see you. I'm glad you're doing so well. I'm very proud of you.